Good evening, Holliston. Welcome to the Select Board's meeting for Monday, March 1st, 2021. This evening we have an agenda that includes coronavirus updates, some budget reviews, and some board business. We'll start, as we always do these days, with our Fire Chief Emergency Manager, Chief Mike Cassidy. Good evening, Chief. How are you?
I'm exceptional. Thank you for having me.
We could start off with the community update.
Absolutely.
Great.
So since last week, we have added 18 additional cases, which means that we are up to 649. We have not had any additional reports of cases having recovered. We currently have not had any additional COVID-related fatalities. We're up to 30 active cases, which is down from where we were a week ago this time. And we are currently, those cases are spread out over 27 addresses, which is down 2. And as you see, where the cases are spread out, again, the majority are at single-family homes. We've got one cluster at a multifamily dwelling. We also have a couple single cases at multifamily dwellings, and we still have the one cluster at the group home that we've mentioned in the past. We had 5 new cases on Wednesday and 13 new cases today. I would suggest that those 13 new cases that came into us today are probably related to, in part, to post-February vacation activities. We'll just put it in
Exposures. Yep.
Yes. We're now a week into Fall 2 sports. I do have a meeting later on this week with some school personnel just to check in and see how Fall 2 sports is going. And we hope that we will continue to be able to move forward with keeping the students and everyone safe. In terms of our cases, it's a modest increase from last week, again, because it was only 18 new cases. In terms of our percent positivity, our cases continue to trend down in the correct direction. Last Thursday, when the state released the weekly data, we were down to 1.82. The state was at 2.27. That makes our 5th consecutive week of being in the yellow, and we are now back down to the lower positivity level that we were at in the middle of October. In terms of the map, it is very good to see that, once again, the majority of the communities around us continue to be in yellow. Sherburne is in the gray for the 2nd consecutive week. And no changes to where we are on the COVID vaccination distribution plan right now. However, I will get into some of the good news that has come up recently momentarily. I understand there is still some frustration with regards to people being able to get appointments. The state continues to make tweaks to their system. However, some folks have also found success using individual websites for pharmacies. But if you're looking to go to a mass vaccination site, we obviously would continue to encourage you to pursue the vaxfinder.mass.gov. Last week, Holliston, as part of a regional collaborative with several other communities, did send communication to the Department of Public Health indicating that they were interested in regionally providing a vaccination site in this region. That request was denied by the DPH. There is some follow-up discussions that will be taking place with DPH, but a lot of that is related to the new applications for regional collaboratives are designed to be in areas where there is not a current geographic solution. So because there is a mass vac site in Walpole, there is a mass vac site in Worcester, there is a mass vac site now up and operating in Natick, and there is a large regional site in Marlborough. The DPH, when they looked at the communities that were involved in this application, did not think that it was necessary for an additional regional collaborative in this region. So we continue to explore options for making sure that people from our area can get the shot in a convenient location. Some good news was received over the weekend. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine received the emergency use authorization from the FDA. This is now the 3rd vaccine which is being made available to the market. They started shipping last evening, and this is approved for individuals 18 and older. And the difference between this and other vaccines which are on the market is this can be done with just one shot. They have shown to be safe and effective. And so it received the EUA, and the distribution would be for just one shot for individuals. Today being March 1st, we moved to back to a different phase of the reopening plan, and a lot of industries now were able to go back to 50% capacity, and for many of those industries, the 50% capacity did not include employees, with the exception of office spaces. Employees still count towards the 50% limit in the offices. And there still are no changes to drive-in movie theaters, construction, laboratories, and manufacturing. And then the thing that we do have in town, we've got some restaurants. They are no longer subject to a percent seating capacity. Their only limitation is based on their square footage and their ability to continue to maintain 6 feet between tables. Still not allowed to have certain types of activities, but you can have musical performances in restaurants with the appropriate distancing. You still are limited to 90 minutes at your table, and you cannot have more than 6 parties at your table. And we don't have many of these in town, but food courts still are not available. And then just a reminder, although the trends are going in the right direction and a lot more people are getting the vaccine, we do want to remind people that this is still a vaccine which is transmissible, and even with new variants, and just because you get the shot doesn't mean that you need to stop being vigilant. So we continue to remind everyone in town of the steps that they need to take to stay safe. And with that, I will pause and take questions on the first half.
Thank you, Chief. We'll start with Mrs. Burrow. Hi, Ben.
Hi. I don't have any questions this evening.
What?
I know. Well, we see you every week. I think I've asked most of them. You answered some of my questions.
Excellent.
So I appreciate everything you're doing here. I think we should mix it up and put you in a different place in the agenda each week, make it a little more interesting for you.
That's fine.
But
I
appreciate
serve with the
everything.
pleasure of the board.
Of course. So I'm good. Thank you.
Tina.
Just a couple questions. So you ran through the list of vac sites in the area.
Yes.
I'm wondering about testing sites. You are starting to hear a little bit nationally about the number of testing sites, or the rate of testing going down a little bit. I can tell you from work that we still have people coming in positive. We still have people coming in acutely ill positive, and we still have people who are dying. So, again, don't get taken out in the last minute of the fourth quarter here.
No.
Hang in there and do the right thing. So that includes testing. So do you know what sites are still open, where people might have been going to already previously that are still open? Have we seen a change in open testing sites, not vac sites, but testing
There
sites?
have been some test sites that have needed to modify their operations, either due to weather or due to the site shifting to a new mission.
Right.
But within close proximity to here, you can usually get tested either in the Framingham, Milford area.
Okay. And then pool testing is starting this week? Started Monday, today?
Yes.
All 4 schools?
That will be part of my my CARES Act monetary request update.
Yeah.
But yes,
Okay.
The Holliston Public Schools was one of 120 school districts that were approved to be part of a pilot program for pool testing, and they did begin that this week.
Do you anticipate that the positivity rate will go up, go down? Do you anticipate that your reporting will reflect this increased level of testing in the schools? Should we anticipate next week, the following couple of weeks, or at all through the school year to hear from you that numbers change as a result, that you would attribute, well, you won't know until it happens, but
Right.
do you anticipate a change because of pool testing?
So pool testing is a surveillance tool that is not being entered into Maven. So if a positive result comes back through pool testing, then they will go back and determine who it was that was in that pool, and they will need to have additional testing. And depending on how that testing is done would determine whether or not someone ends up in the Maven system. So
Okay, I thought the pool testing was everyone got the rapid, and then if that cluster came back positive, they all went and got the PCR.
If a pool test result is positive, then all individuals in the pool are retested individually,
Yep.
which is called reflex testing.
Yep.
And that can be done with the Abbott Binex Now, which
Okay.
the schools have access to.
Yep.
So again, that doesn't get entered
Okay.
into Maven.
Okay.
Depending on the result of the Abbott Binex Now, they then may be sent on for PCR. PCR would be entered into the Maven system.
So it won't have mattered that you maybe have tested 10 or 15 or 20 kids to get to that one maybe positive, it will just be that one.
Correct.
Okay, I get it.
And all of the, like the pool testing numbers don't count towards our positivity rate,
Okay.
towards, quote, total number of tests administered. It's only total number of tests that are administered that go through the Maven system that associate a Holliston address.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's all I had, thank you.
Great, thank you, Tina. Chief, I just have a couple of questions. There's been discussion in the media lately about the so-called coronavirus variant. It is in now Massachusetts, I believe. It's got a small case number.
Yes.
Is DPH tracking the variant? I believe I asked you that some time ago, but
Yes.
I don't recall if it's evolved.
Sure. So, DPH is monitoring for the variant, and that's how they have discovered that it has been at multiple locations in the Commonwealth. That is a lagging indicator. By the time someone has tested, they've been entered into the Maven system, and they start to do surveillance, and they get some additional information that could raise the index of suspicion such that additional testing is then done to their original sample, where they might then be able to determine the variant. Right now, it's just either coronavirus, not coronavirus. It can be a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even 3 weeks after initial testing. And again, this is partly based on an informational interview, where they're trying to figure out where the individual who tested positive has been, such that they may do the additional testing to determine if it is indeed one of those variants that sometimes is geographically based.
Is there any indication that public health, DPH, is entertaining any different protocols for variant tracking? For example, Ms. Hine just brought up pool testing. If a child in a school tests positive for the variant, are existing COVID-related protocols sufficient, or do things change?
So, it could even be a case that if a hypothetical student tested positive through pool testing, positive through Avid Binax Now, went and got the PCR testing, their case actually might have been resolved before DPH might notify Salmon that that variant was present with one of our test samples.
So effectively, the protocols they're not changed.
They're not changed, that's correct.
I see you put a slide up relative to the public awareness. I just wanted to, on behalf of the board, ensure that through your efforts, we are still promoting and pushing public awareness to the public
Yes.
regularly through social
Yep.
media and those tools we talked about.
Continue to get good engagement on those,
Great.
yes.
The last question I had is relative to the community standing. We've evolved down to yellow, I think you said 2 weeks ago. If we continue to trend below 1%, could you just tell us when do you become gray? Where's that line of community designation change for us?
So, gray is less than or equal to 10 total cases per, but for a community our size, it would be less than 10 total cases.
Okay.
So we're not quite there yet. Like, we had 25 new cases in last week's report, 30 the week before, so we're edging towards that. But, and again, they changed the metrics back in November. We still aren't quite there yet.
I got you. I'm going to turn to the public at this point, see if there's any questions on the community update side of the coronavirus. Any questions from those assembled on the Zoom call this evening? The chief on the community, please. Hearing none. Chief, we will move on to the CARES Act programmatic update.
Excellent. Not a lot of new expenses have been posted to Munis in the last week, but we do provide the total amount there, as well as in a graph form. And once again, the graph is being published as part of the weekly update, which is being put on the website on Thursday evenings. The numeric numbers you see before you here, and I'm confident that our partners and friends in the hyper-local media will be reporting on those numbers as quickly as possible. And that brings us to our monetary requests. So before I get to the new requests, I would want to plug something. I saw the Director of Youth and Family Services on the Zoom call tonight, and she has sent some information to the Town Administrator and myself and the Senior Center Director. And if there is anybody who is facing food insecurity, you may be eligible for additional assistance that you're not aware of. Do not be afraid to ask for help. You can contact any of the local agencies, whether it's Youth and Family Services, whether it's the Council on Aging, and find out if you are eligible for additional assistance. There are a lot of programs that have been stood up, not only since January 20th, but even before that. There are federal programs, there are state programs, and so if if their family is having a hard time getting healthy, nutritious food on a consistent basis, there is no shame in asking for help.
I guess pause there for a moment, because I think that's a good point. I know Holliston Reporter covers our meetings, so I would ask that, Chris or you that add the phone numbers for the agencies you just mentioned in case somebody picks it up tomorrow. A little easier for them to gain access to that information.
Absolutely, and, we've got a great community, and we've recognized a lot of the volunteers that stepped up and helped families and individuals last summer and fall, whether it was the food pantry and it was other nonprofit organizations that helped to get food distributed, and that distribution is still going on now. But the bottom line of the Youth and Family Service Director's email to us the other day was there may be more people eligible for help than know it. So that will be part of our amped up messaging as well.
Understood.
In terms of our requests, and the first one is actually related to food. So one of the previous votes that the board had taken was to authorize grocery and or meal delivery expenses related to supplies for the Council on Aging, and you had also previously approved doing a journal entry to move transportation, the delivery costs, from July to December to CARES. The Senior Center Director is now asking that you would approve $5,200, which would cover the January to June portion of the meals delivery, the delivery itself. And there was an affirmative vote of the board that is requesting this.
All right, so essentially it's a twofold vote, right? We're going to seek to award $5,200 and
I'll get to the second one next.
okay, you don't want it because
No, because they're separate.
All right.
I want it to be clear.
Are there any questions on the Council on Aging request of $5,200?
Nope.
Only just, you have up there January to June 2021. So that 5,200 is what they anticipate needing through June 2021?
Yeah, the first half of the year was $5,200, and so they were projecting that the second half would be roughly the same in terms of their delivery costs.
I'll make a motion to approve, $5,200 for the Council on Aging from the CARES Act fund.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries, thank you.
Great, and the second one is something we haven't had to do before. We actually didn't even codify this in our decision-making flowchart months ago, but the Council on Aging has said that we can release the money that we had a hold on. Several weeks ago, the board on February 8th had voted to authorize $15,000 because we were trying to be extremely responsive and proactive and make transportation solutions available for those at that time 75 and older who we may help with an appointment or just needed help getting to a vaccination site. Since then, the Council on Aging has been awarded a quick turnaround grant specifically for vaccine appointments. They have already been approved for a $4,000 grant with the option to apply for an additional $4,000 if that is used in its entirety. So the Senior Center Director has said that has asked that you would make that $15,000 previously earmarked for air transportation costs for vaccine appointments available for other uses.
Excellent. Any questions on this matter, Mr. Scarrow? Sign? Ben, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, I will make a motion to rescind the transportation cost vote that this board took on February 8th for $15,000 and release it back to the general CARES fund.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries.
Great, and the last one is a little bit larger. The schools, as Ms. Heim already mentioned, is currently part of a pilot program for pool testing that was made possible by the State Department of Education, DESE, and they are paying most of the costs for that pool testing through March 28th. The request of the school committee, and this came by a vote of 7-0, at their meeting on February 25th, was to request that the board set aside $100,000 from CARES Act fund for surveillance testing. And this would pay the costs, essentially, for the weeks of the 2020-2021 school year, after March 28th through the end of the school year.
Questions on that, Beth?
No. I read the Boston Globe article, had a lot of
Tina?
My only question is, are there goals attached on the part of the schools, are there goals attached to, pool testing? You know, this will be successful, this will be a positive. What then is accomplished, or is that not the way to look at it? Is that not the way they're looking at this?
So, the utilization of pool testing assists with multiple decisions being made. Not only does it relate to, is our current model working in terms of number of students in a specific classroom, because the pools have to be groups together. You really can't pool multiple teachers' classrooms. So first of all, you know, is there disease transmission taking place in a specific school? Is there disease transmission taking place in a specific grade? But then, as there is a push from DESE to transition from remote learning back to in-person, this will offer a greater level of comfort for parents, students, and staff, that although they may increase the occupancy of a room, of a school, of, you know, an entire district, that it has not contributed to additional spread, because all of the other mitigation steps are still in place. They're still requiring the approved phase coverings, they're still doing the mask breaks as weather permits, they still have the very rigorous cleaning protocols in place, they still have the distancing. Part of the issue in play is what distancing is appropriate, and state guidance has been fungible, and we want to make sure that everyone feels safe, and so there may be some data that comes out of the pool testing that reassures them that they are safe.
Got it. And, that's helpful, thank you. I'm all set.
You good?
Yeah.
Mike, when does the current school year end? Is there a date, last day of school?
Oh, you're a parent. I would say that based on the few number of...
Late June?
Mid to late June.
This program is only for that period of time. It doesn't consider any summer school schedules or anything along that line. So the program, such as it is strictly through the end of our fiscal year, ironically. But that's when this projected cost would end.
Correct.
Okay.
So in order for the pools to work well, you need approximately 10 to 25 samples or swabs in the sample that's being tested. So things like the summer program that they do, those students tend not to be in that large group. Especially last summer, they really had the group sizes very small, so I'm not sure that they would be able to effectively use pool testing in the summer.
Got it.
But this was based on a number of pools that they're predicting from post March 28th to the end of the year on the district-wide level.
Understood. Excuse me. As the wheels of government turn in Washington, we understand that the stimulus version, the latest version, is moving, and there have been reports that resources would be coming back to states on various levels. So to the extent that we see any replication of the previous stimulus where it trickled down to both schools and states and communities like ours, I just want to put a bookmark here that in the event that we see some stimulus money come through, and there's any look-back period, this $100,000 go back to the school side if there's resources for it. Just something from an accounting perspective to keep an eye on, right, Travis? On that. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve the $100,000 pool testing for COVID for the Holliston Public Schools.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries.
That is all I have.
Let me just ask if there are any questions. I see Linda Marshall has joined us this evening. I'd like to give Linda a chance to give us an update on how things are going on the seniors, as they, begin their vaccination. Good evening, Linda. How are you?
I'm great. How are you folks?
Outstanding. So thanks for joining us, as we have done recently for each week. I think it's important that folks hear from our Council on Aging Director. So if you'd like to take a couple of minutes to give us an update on what you folks have been up to support our seniors during this time that, for the most part, it's vaccination time. Linda, can you share any updates?
I can. At this point, we have now helped over 100 seniors in Holliston in some capacity towards the vaccine. We are hearing from more and more of them that they are successful. We currently have just 12 that we're still trying to secure appointments for. We are still getting, however, a lot of calls. Most of these are from individuals who are on a computer and capable and just aren't able to schedule an appointment. So they're looking to see if we have some direct connection, and we explain that we're using the same systems, perhaps suggesting that they may go directly to the pharmacy sites, to the Milford Hospital site, to look as well. But we are hearing more and more that there is success in getting folks with at least the first dose of the vaccine. They're very anxious to reopen the center. So we're trying to slow them down a little bit. The morning after the governor announced the reopening plans, I got a call and said, so can we come for lunch on Monday? Yes, chief. I see that. So again, explaining that it's going to take some time and it's a process, and we want to keep everybody safe, and want to see more people vaccinated. Of course, we're also under renovations right now, so it's challenging at the center, but we'll have a bright new place for them when they come back. So we continue to just keep working with seniors as they need help with the vaccine process, with the feelings of isolation, which is the other huge issue. We know how hard it has been, that it's been a year now since many of them have not left their home, essentially, other than for, real essential type needs. Many of them have really followed the rules.
Anything else, Linda?
I think that basically covers it.
Okay, I have a question for you, if I could.
Of course.
Early on, about a month and a half ago, I think you gave us a number of clients that the Council on Aging supports here in Holliston. It was a considerable number, over 1,000, I believe. Is that right?
It is approximately that. We have approximately 1,000 active members. Yes.
You mentioned that you're receiving phone calls from clients and family members of clients looking to schedule vaccine appointments and learn more about this process. So my question is not so much for the people that are calling the COA, but I wanted to know if your staff has made any attempts to contact individuals who may not be, either for whatever reason, making the calls on their own to make sure that they are being taken care of. Is there any attempt to push the message back to the clients? Is there a quicker way to put it?
Other than at this point through robocalls, no. I mean, we've been out straight, even just dealing with it, the capacity that it is, with the volume of calls. It's not uncommon for all 4 of our phones to be active at the same time, with the numbers coming in for that, as well as the normal stuff that we get calls for every single day. So we've tried to reach out. Cassie also did a robocall through the town to reach some of the people that may not be in our system.
So the robocall went to all residents or just the clients of COA?
So they have their own call system, and
Yep.
then I did a Blackboard Connect to the whole town, just sort of talking about where we were, who was eligible at the time, and what resources were available and how to access those.
So let me talk to my colleagues, Ben and Tina. Do you see some value in asking the Council on Aging to push this message and possibly try to connect with individuals who, through their own means, haven't done so already? Advance some notice that they're there to help and they want to reach people who may not have already done it on their own.
Through the Blackboard system?
Through the robocall system. It sounds like Linda's made a robocall, but it was through the Blackboard blast that went to everybody. I guess,
Alternatively, I mean, an eligible expense on the CARES is communications. So if we wanted to develop a postcard and mail it to everybody over a certain age based on the census, those costs would be covered, both the production of the postcard as well as the postage itself.
So at the risk of maybe not solving a problem here, let me just introduce it, and maybe, Linda, if you could talk to your staff, and certainly Chief Cassidy, I guess, but think about the notion that pushing a message out to all your clients and welcoming their inquiries or their help, or extending your help to them is another way of closing the communication loop to ensure that we are touching everybody as often as we can, and we're not, ignoring folks that may not have the resources to use a phone or to navigate this process that sounds a little confusing to even most folks. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to report back on any type of such communication that might effectively reach these folks. Is that fair enough, Linda?
It is, and also our newsletter was mailed out last week, and we also have information in our newsletter, and that goes to about 3,500 senior homes in Holliston.
Excellent. All right. Any questions on the Zoom call for Ms. Linda Marshall before we move on here?
Actually, I had one other point about fair assessment.
Okay, Linda, I think we're all set with questions for you this evening. Thanks you, as always, for joining us. Ben, you have a question for the chief before we move on?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to, we just approved a $100,000. I understand that it's in flux and things like that. But could we put together, I'd love to see, even just like a pretty rudimentary, these are the expenses if we continue at what we're doing for the rest of the fiscal year. Like, this is how much we project, and then they have one number there, and then also for the rest of the CARES.
When it could end.
When the CARES money ends.
Right.
Barring, as my colleague points out, the potential additional stimulus, but let's play with what we've got and what we know is out there. But I'd just like to sort of understand, we have these numbers, and that's great, but I kind of want to understand, where.
So let me just interject a little bit.
Sure.
I think Chief and I could certainly put that together. One thing is we saw from the rescinding of $15,000 for transportation, those types of things, a number of the issues that we've identified and have been approved, we then find, sort of a couple weeks later, sometimes grant opportunities will come up. So, for example, the rescinding of that had to do with the fact that funding became available for the same essential purpose. I don't know if Chief, on the sort of some of the Board of Health ongoing costs also have been covered by a grant that sort of came out after we discussed with you that CARES could cover it. So I think it would be, certainly the cleanings and those types of things that are ongoing, but some of the other ones are we approve them to be proactive, and then, sort of after the fact, some of those funding sources find their way in to supplement what is also the CARES funding. So, no matter how rudimentary you want to go, there's
no, and I know there's always gyrations here. It's just that as we start approving these things, as we start looking at these numbers, I just want to make sure that I can contextualize. I'm a numbers guy. I like to sort of understand, how this fits into the bigger picture to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position, if things continue. I mean, we're all hopeful, but I want to make sure that we're realistic, that that we're not trying to prove pool testing and trying to figure it out in November because we weren't thinking ahead a little bit. And I understand it's in flux. I know it's not. This is the way it is, but I think it's a good idea to sort of understand this as a bigger picture.
I'm not going to come to you with a report that says we're going to run out of money based on our current run rate.
Of course.
On August 11th.
I'm not saying.
But I will be happy to work with
if we see that we're trending to spend, I'm making a number of $250,000, then I'll feel more comfortable taking some of these votes. I just kind of want to understand how this works, and that we're not coming up against a wall that we might be having to make some choices, and I just want to get ahead of that before we get there.
And we've got a department head meeting on Wednesday. So we can once again plug to the department heads that if there's something that they've been thinking about but haven't quite gotten around to asking, it would be a good idea for them to formulate that and get some prices and, work through whatever boards or committees they need to if there's a vote required before it gets to you here.
Can I ask one?
Please, go ahead.
You both raised great points on pool testing, okay? I'm just going to surf on this for a little bit. You asked about summer programming, and I wonder about Parks and Rec. And you mentioned the fall, and I wonder about pool testing in the fall again, and I wonder about extended day. I'm just putting all that out there, maybe just for a future conversation, but pool testing does seem to be a bit of a door that's opened to allow new possibilities for returning children to things that have been missing from their lives for a while, or giving them more access to things that are limited in their lives right now. So I think of the summer programming, and I think of extended day, and I think of the fall. And I wonder, I'm sure we're not there as a state to offer guidance yet, but I do think that those are both reasonable scenarios to consider for future requests for CARES money. It does seem like that's probably a reasonable assumption to make.
It is, but, sorry to interrupt, but some of it is also the timing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a week-long junior Potomac program running at
Yeah.
Parks and Rec, and you sample on Monday, and you get the results back on Tuesday,
Yeah,
your ability to
Yeah.
react,
right.
your week is down at that point.
No, I get that, sure. But I thought extended day ran over the summer, but anyway.
Right, they had to significantly modify their program last summer.
Exactly.
And I would just say to the evolving aspect of other funding sources, I think there's a little bit of surprise, not just in Holliston, elsewhere, that, the edict to get children back in April was not tied with a funding source from DESI for pool testing. I think the expectation would be that if the expectation is from DESI for all, school districts to be having pool testing going into the fall, that there will be some sort of funding mechanism in place by then. I think there's some disappointment that there was not something tied to the most recent announcement from the state,
Yeah.
that this was the expectation, and that clearly to get this done, pool testing is most likely a necessity, but we're relying on CARES, which is why I came to you.
Right, got it. That makes sense.
You good?
Yes, thank you.
Chief, as Ms. Heim dropped the Parks and Rec word, we would encourage you as we approach the spring to, of course, engage and listen to any programmatic needs that they may have as well. They've obviously been dormant for the last several months, but keep the door open there.
Absolutely.
As always, thanks so much for your update.
Of course.
Have a great week. Thanks.
Thank you.
Move on. Okay, Ben, ready? Warrant?
All right, we have one warrant, and it is, so I will make a motion to approve the warrant in the amount of $1,796,435.71. Of that, $1,223,623.81 is town hero.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Public comments, Mrs. Carroll.
Yeah, I have one. In my, on Facebook, I came across a post on social media that just sort of struck me. I thought it sounded to be something that was, there's two things about it that I really want to point out. So there's an individual, Josh Solberg, who's looking to create, to take some of the old tennis courts at Potomac Park and making them into something else. He's working with Parks and Rec on that particular project and looking into some different things, and some not necessarily funding from the town. I wanted to point it out that I think it's a great project, and I think it's a nice idea to try to take something that's not doing as much and turning it into something else, perhaps. But I also want to point out, as an extension of that, is think about, it's very useful and important for residents to get involved and to think about some of these things. We can't think about everything and be in all places at once, so people who see a need or see something that's an opportunity or something that needs to be brought to our attention, it's great when they do. He didn't actually bring it to me. I contacted him. But I think it's great seeing people in the community stepping up and doing things like that and trying to take care and looking to improve their community and seeing potential needs and opportunities out there. So I applaud him and what he's doing, and I hope people can reach out to Josh Solberg and if they want to help out in this particular project and find out more. He's the spearhead here, not me. And I also encourage others who see these kinds of things to step up, bring them to our attention or bring them to the public's attention and see what we can do to make Holliston a better place. And it's useful and it's helpful for all of us, so thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
I do not have any public comment. Thank you.
All right, just one item from me. Excuse me. On Saturday afternoon, I joined a very small gathering here at Town Hall, Upper Town Hall, to honor Charlie Nickerson as the latest recipient of the oldest veteran in Holliston. As we have previously mentioned, Mr. Nickerson was named by the American Legion, having served in World War II. During Saturday's presentation, Mr. Steve Bradford presided and shared some information relative to Mr. Nickerson's service. Bobby Blair then picked up and added more detail to his background. Truly a remarkable young man of 95. He was quite moved, speechless actually. He didn't want to be recognized, didn't want to add any details. He made a couple of funny remarks, but afterwards he collected his proclamations, including from Ms. Greendale representing Senator Spilker. We, of course, gave our own, and Rep. Dykman sent along one. He wanted pictures with everyone. I talked to a couple of folks who just observed Mr. Nickerson is still very vibrant, and we wish him continued good health, and wanted to just extend our best wishes to him going forward. A truly remarkable guy. Let's move on. Any public comments from those assembled on our call this evening? Hearing none. It's the Travis Ahern Show. Cue the music.
So we're going to
Da, 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 da.
Just very quickly, we are progressing through the search for the director of the Senior Center, Council on Aging. Should have an update for you next week there. Facilities update, the long-awaited town hall doors, one of the doors is actually blocked off right now. It's being worked on. Additionally, the floors upstairs started today, so it was a lot of noises in town hall today, but those are two projects we're all looking forward to. Just want to highlight the upcoming 2 weeks as well, after we get through budgets tonight, although we will have some budget conversations beyond this evening. March 8th, we'll start off with Rep. Dykma and Senator Spilka. The Select Board, the School Committee, and Finance Committee have both been notified of that meeting. It's unclear to me at the moment if they will also post at the time, but I think we'll at least have representation from those two groups with you. We will follow that at 7 o'clock at the top of the 8th with an 8 o'clock posting for the Governance Committee to come back to you on their progress. They've been meeting with some other groups. The following week, on March 15th, some of the items that will be discussed in the police budget tonight, I expect potentially on the 15th we would come back and have an update from the police department on the impacts of the Police Reform Act on any policies and procedures in town. And additionally, if that is going to be the night that we have that conversation, I would think that would be a good time for you to also finalize the conversation on the Front Street one-way process and parking plans as your current temporary vote for the Front Street one-way runs through March. And so we will want to make that permanent if that is going to be the board's will. Lastly, on that meeting, I will also be bringing you an update on where we are with dam inspections with feedback from the Sustainability Coordinator and Conservation Agent. So two action-packed meetings coming up in the next 2 weeks. That's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions for the Town Administrator from those on the Zoom call? Travis, one quick question as we move into the FY22 budget and review. Would you remind me the date that the warrant closes?
The warrant closes on March 29th at 4 p.m. I think there's been some confusion. That is essentially the last date at which we would accept new articles. That does not mean that articles that are being considered by the Select Board could not still be altered after that time. But that is the last time that we would accept new articles for the May 10th meeting.
Citizen petition, things like that.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. And as we trend towards this evening's meeting with the Chief, Youth and Family Services, we're getting closer to the end game here. We're going to now pivot soon to talk about articles, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
As early as next week.
As early as next week.
And I've provided you with the tracking that I have at the moment. We are tracking 30 articles. I think it was discussed between the Governance Committee and some of the previous groups they've discussed with, including the finance staff last Thursday, that there's a pretty good possibility that we'll have 2 nights of town meeting at the least this year, but 30 articles before we begin review is a healthy number.
Now, I'm just curious on the warrant, do you number your articles or do you letter them?
I'll be using numbering.
Excellent. I'm very happy to hear that. Let's move on to the FY22 budget review. Huh? Chief Cassidy understands my question.
It will be a
let's
new
start.
experience this year, is what you're saying.
I can see that, yes. Exciting. We're going to start with Youth and Family Services. I see Jackie's with us. Good evening, Jackie. How are you?
Let me unmute myself here. How is
There you go.
everyone?
We're well, thank you.
Yeah.
So we'd like to hear from you this evening on the FY22 Youth and Family Services budget. I will give you a little bit of a hint on one question I might ask that is a little outside your budget presentation, but if you can also incorporate any information relative to future CARES Act money you might be interested in getting. There's been some dialogue here. Just feel free to give us an update. But the floor is yours, Jackie. Go for it.
Great. Yeah, let me just introduce myself again. I always like to take the opportunity to share a little bit of information about Holliston Youth and Family Services with listeners. I consider ourselves a bit of a hidden gem of Holliston, though I wish we weren't quite hidden. So I'm the director of Holliston Youth and Family Services, and we have a mission to provide counseling and social services to Holliston residents and to promote behavioral health and wellness for the entire community. And my role is to provide counseling, clinical consultation, to supervise our other clinicians, and to help all staff provide resources and information to town residents. We've had a really busy year, unprecedented in so many ways. We had to pivot early in March, can't even believe almost a year ago today. We had to start our telehealth journey, and we worked remotely for, I would say, a good 4 months. We were able to come back probably around May, where we started to see our clients outside at their homes. And we did that uninterrupted from May all the way up until January. We really decided in January that the traveling for the holidays was really increasing. The numbers in town were increasing. And so we did roll back for a month from January to February, but we are now back seeing clients in our office, and credit to my staff for just really going above and beyond this year in terms of being able to meet the needs that we're seeing. So that's a little bit about us. One of our biggest undertakings during the course of the pandemic has been our rent and mortgage relief program. We have done 2 rounds of that so far. It's been incredibly successful. We helped 27 families and provided $50,000 in relief to Holliston residents. Many of the families that accessed support from that fund were, I would say 95% of them were single family households with dependent children at home. And that had to do a lot with our marketing of the program. We really wanted to target families. So we did a lot of messaging through the school department and through their messaging system, which helped, I think, kind of get specific on who we were targeting here in town. We are looking to do a 3rd round of rent and mortgage relief. We are looking for another $25,000 of CARES Act money to go towards that 3rd round. The guidelines from the state continuously get updated in terms of best practices for rent and mortgage relief. And there are 2 programs that I want to make sure residents are aware of, and that is IRMA and RAFT. And those programs provide up to $10,000 in rent and mortgage relief, depending on if you meet a certain income requirement. The state has made a huge amount of changes to those requirements because, again, COVID has really changed the rule book, as I say, in terms of how we allocate resources for families that are in need. And so we were seeing a lot of people get denied early on in the pandemic because their finances were based off of their 2019 tax returns. And so not based off of kind of what they were really currently dealing with in the present moment. And so if you applied for any of those funds and got denied, if you applied for food assistance and got denied, if you applied for unemployment and got denied, I would encourage you to reapply, because a lot of people qualify for these programs that they aren't necessarily think that they would qualify for. So I think one of the things that we want to be careful about with this third round is that we do our due diligence, and it's already in our application that we ask if they're receiving RAF to IRMA, if they've received other assistant programs, because there's so many doors open for people right now to be able to get that help. The state just doesn't want double dipping happening at this point. So we're gonna, with the third round, I think, be a lot more diligent in making sure that people have access to the resources that are available to them, and that if they have, that we know that kind of upfront. So that's that piece around the rent and mortgage relief. That's been one of our biggest undertakings during COVID as a department.
Jackie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but did you mention that your board has taken a vote on that next round, or is that something that's
We
still?
are voting on it on Monday. So we meet again on Monday. So the board will vote again on Monday, and then we will bring that to Chief Cassidy and he will bring that to the board.
Thanks.
Ready to pull the budget up?
Sure. Do we need a magnifying glass? Can everybody see?
Yeah.
Yes. On the screen? Okay. So, my budget, 95% of it is administrative salaries. The addition of $5,414 under part-time salaries is for a temporary position covering a maternity leave. For about 15 weeks, we are looking for a part-time clinician who will be able to cover cases in our office. We do have internal candidates interested in that position, but it will be posted sometime soon. Mary's been working really hard on it to get it posted. So we'll have that up and running soon for that position. But that is an increase in the budget for FY22. The other pieces, what I call my operating budget, that's the additional 8% of my budget, includes additional costs for our phone system upgrade. So we've really had to make sure that our phones are able to be accessible, that people are able to access us regardless of if we're working in our offices or if we're working at home. So we have a subscription service that Chris Mayo helped us put in place, and that was $2,400 for 3 phones, 4 voicemails, and 4 subscription services so that we could receive calls to our cell phones. And then under purchase services, it includes an increase of $2,326, and that was for our Theranest electronic medical record costs. So those are the 2 main pieces of the budget that have impacted our total amount the most. Everything else has remained the same. My consultant has not gone up in prices. So we have a consultant that comes to our program. She was only bi-weekly initially when we had her, but because she is not having to travel to our department, she's actually increased and not charged us. So we actually have access to her weekly, that staff are being able to utilize her for case presentations, professional development opportunities. And she's been incredibly instrumental, especially in the beginning part of the pandemic when I was out of the office for a couple weeks. Rona really stepped in and supported Kirsten, who really rose to the occasion and kind of making sure that we were following through on referrals and things like that when I was out of the office. So I can't say that her prices won't change, as cost of living changes, market increases happen, but for this year, her prices have stayed the same. So that's the impact on the budget there for Holliston Youth and Family Services.
Thank you, Jackie. I think we have a couple questions for you. I'll start with Mr. Sparrow.
First, just Jackie, thank you very much for all the things that you're doing. I really appreciate that you are being proactive and trying to help the community. I think you are a hidden gem in this community, and I think people are aware of you and the help you provide to the schools and through police as they come into contact with people who need help from you. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing for us and for Holliston. I only have one question, and this is sort of a follow-up, and please forgive me. I should have done a little bit more of the homework here. We didn't we approve the grant for the grant writing, to write a grant in, was it December?
Yes.
Could you give us an update on that and how that's going, or if it started, or anything you could tell us about that?
Yeah, we had a very successful kickoff meeting 2 meetings ago. So I think in January, and we invited Tina and Sue from the Finance Committee, Dr. Kufska from as a superintendent of Holliston Public Schools attended, as well as Chief of Fire, Lieutenant Lorraine. It was a packed house, and it was a great conversation about the DFC grant, expectations on stakeholders, sort of what our strategic plan is going to look like for that grant process, and sort of gathering data and information so that we can really create a strong narrative. The grant writer is very impressed with our coalition and the work that we have done, and that is a direct reflection on these core members that have worked tirelessly in Holliston for substance abuse and prevention programming, including Melissa Stacy, who is the coalition chair. And so the scope of the DFC the grant writer is so large. She will be with us every coalition meeting for the next 10 months. When we finish by July 1, we will have a complete written product to be able to submit for the RFR. In terms of when we can actually hit send on that application isn't until the fall. But we went with the best grant writer humanly possible. She has sat on the DFC panels and evaluated grants as they come in. She's really well versed in this type of a grant. And so we went with the expertise of her. She is currently writing a grant right now. And so we can't submit a grant when she's already submitting for another town, because she can't compete against towns. So what we're doing is we're using her for the entire remainder of the year until July 1st. And we will have a written product so that we can be able to submit it in early fall. And it gives us time. This is a real big undertaking for the community. We're talking about $150,000 for the next 5 years, potentially more. And so we want to make sure that we're on solid footing. We've primed the wheels. Everybody knows sort of what's coming down the pipe, so that when we write this grant, the capacity to take this on is there. So it really requires us to work together as a community, build strong alliances, build strong connections. We're planning a retreat for stakeholders sometime in the spring, and we are plugging along in writing the DFC grant, so it's going well.
Well, thank you. That was all I had. So thank you for doing that, and it's great to hear departments working together to put something like this together. I think this is very important, and it's great to see this kind of thing come into Holliston. So thanks again.
Thank
That's all I got.
Thank you, Ben. Tina.
Yeah, 2 quick questions, Jackie. Of course, I think you're awesome. You do amazing work. So, like Ben, thank you very much. On your 5300 line, professional services.
Yep.
That I believe you said was in part the increase that we're seeing this year over last year is subscription, the EMR rather. Subscription?
Yeah, so 4,500 is the clinical consultant, and then the EMR is $2,326.
And that was funded for FY21 through CARES Act?
That was, yes.
Okay. then same question for the one below, the communications line. The 550 difference that we're seeing there for the 3 phones, the voicemail, and the subscription.
Yes.
Also funded through CARES Act for FY21?
Travis, is that correct for the phone service? I believe that was covered under CARES
Okay.
Act. Yeah.
Okay,
Correct, yes.
I have no questions. Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, so just a couple questions. I wanted to just confirm, Travis, that the budget we're looking at looks like at a summing error. The one on the screen is more accurate.
I just sent the correction to Chris, yep.
Okay, great. Jackie, the professional development line has had no expenditures in FY21. I think we all understand why. With some expectation that there will be some lagging opportunities for professional development as we begin FY22, do you reasonably expect to spend $3,000 starting July 1st on professional development?
We've actually spent a decent amount in the last month. I don't know when this was last updated, but it's likely that.
12/31.
Okay. So it's likely that there will be money left over in this budget, particularly for professional development, because again, a lot of the CEUs that are out there are now on remote, but they are out there, and we do have licensure requirements that require us to have a certain amount of CEUs. And so I do anticipate a chunk of that being used by July 1, but there will be some left over.
Okay. I've got a couple questions about the community therapist position that you have on line 51-110. This looks like, as you said, it's a part-time, but it's defined for 24 weeks or thereabouts. Is that about right? I'm sorry.
15.
24 hours a week for either. Are you shooting for 15 weeks? You said.
Yeah, so this is, the rate is $26.19. It's, I believe, a grade 500 step 1. And that's what we fall under for a master's level position. It's for 19.5 hours a week. And for FY22, it's 10.6 weeks, not 24 weeks.
Now, why part-time? Are you engaged in some kind of a model program here? Is this a proof of concept? Can you describe what the plan is? We've got the responsibilities and the description in front of us. Can you just offer some detail on what you expect out of this role over that 4-month period?
Yeah, so Kirsten carries a caseload right now of more than 15 clients. Some of those clients will need continued care. And so this part-time person will be responsible for maintaining Kirsten's clinical cases, as well as helping us take in additional cases. Because what we don't want to happen is for Jackie to be party of one this summer and have to pause referrals and have to reroute clients who need to be seen by us because we don't have the capacity to see them. So this person will be able to not only oversee Kirsten's caseloads under the direction of me and supervision of me, but also be able to help with new assessments that are coming in through the program, resources and referrals. So Kirsten's going on maternity leave. So this is just simply a coverage for that maternity leave when she's gone.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. That is it for my questions. Are there any questions for the Youth and Family Service budget request from the Zoom call? All right, hearing none. Mr. Sparrow, would you like to make a motion associated with this particular budget request for FY22?
Certainly, I'll make a motion to approve the Youth and Family Services budget for $158,634 for FY22.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Jackie, thanks for joining us. We look forward to hearing through possibly Chief Cassidy next week about the CARES Act request. Until then,
Great.
have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Good night, Jackie.
All right, well, let's move on to the police department. Good evening, Chief Stone. How are you?
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
I asked my 2 lieutenants to join me, if that's all right.
You got it. Just spread out a little bit. Thank you.
Chief Stone, we have an agenda packet that's 90 pages.
Should we reduce to 60 in size?
Well, No, I'm saying, of our 90-page packet, you were 60 of them.
Hey, Beth. How you doing? Pretty good.
Bring it up, maybe?
All right, as Lieutenant Thompson joins the table, just for folks at home, in addition to Chief Stone, we have Lieutenant George Larini, Lieutenant Chad Thompson. The FY '22 Holliston Police Department budget's been under construction for a while. You've had a few meetings with members of this group individually, as well as the Finance Committee, is that right?
Correct.
If you'd like to make an opening statement, go for it, Matt.
I would. To your point, Mr. Chairman, we do start this just before Christmas time. We start reviewing the budget and talking about it on a larger scale. And as we get into January, the reason I asked the two lieutenants to join me is they do a number of phone calls and reaching out to the vendors that we work with throughout the year. So although I'm here presenting it, I'm presenting it to the board. My two lieutenants, along with my administrative assistant, do a tremendous amount of work to prepare this and put this presentation before you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the budget on behalf of the police department. As a police chief, it is my responsibility to provide a safe environment for those who live, work, and visit the town of Holliston. In order to achieve this tremendous task, we constantly seek ways to improve our police department by maintaining our high standards and providing the highest level of police services possible. I'd be remiss if I didn't begin by acknowledging the outstanding work that is performed each and every day by the men and women of the Holliston Police Department. Particularly over the course of this past year, our police officers and dispatchers have performed at an exceptionally high level during one of the most extraordinary times in modern history. Our officers have once again rose to the occasion and patrolled our community day in, day out, night after night, despite a global pandemic happening around us. On good days and on bad, I credit the men and women of the Holliston Police Department for putting their uniforms on each day, each shift, to ensure that our community remains safe. Our Holliston police officers deserve a tremendous amount of credit and public acknowledgement for the fine work that they perform. With that, the budget proposal that we submit to you tonight aims to accomplish our goals in the most effective and efficient way possible. Our community-based policing model and problem-solving approach to public safety is an ongoing effort to achieve greater levels of efficiency and effectiveness. The FY '22 budget presentation takes into account many facets, including the needs and expectations of the Holliston community, so that we may continue to deliver a service that addresses both responsiveness and appropriate skill level. It also addresses officer safety and wellness by reducing some of the stress and work that are put upon our first responders. It also looks at the growing complexity of law enforcement profession as a whole. And lastly, looks at the fiduciary responsibilities of a municipal government. The Patrol Division remains the backbone of our agency, as they are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The Patrol Division has the responsibility of being the first responders to all calls for service within the community. The Police Department budget is unique in that it directly touches upon the very health and well-being of our community members. Our public safety teams are here to serve those with the most immediate needs. This budget aims to provide the same high quality of service to the Holliston community that come to both expect and deserve, while also focusing on the future of the agency and looking at proactive opportunities that will continue to help us improve. It is our hope that the documents provided to the board, all 60 pages, present both a transparent representation of the police department and the many functions that we serve. Once again, I'd like to thank the board for allowing us to present the FY '22 budget and would happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Chief. We will start our questions with Mr. Sparrow.
Yes, thanks again, Chief. We met a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciate you, you reached out to me, and I appreciate you taking the initiative to talk to me, to give me a chance to spend a little bit of time talking to you about what's important to you and things like that. And, my main takeaways from that I really appreciate about the things that you're doing in this particular proposal and presentation that you put in front of us is to really highlight the fact that you put together something that has sort of a strategic plan, a long-term plan to try to figure out where the police department's going to look like in a couple of years, not just this particular budget, how the budget that you put in front of us meets the goals that you have for the department, and understanding where we want to be. Holliston is often cited as one of the safer towns in Massachusetts, and you're a large part of that, obviously. So it's very important. We appreciate that, and we appreciate what you and your team do on a daily basis, and how you put yourselves in harm's way and do things. We see citations for some of your officers for some of their exceptional heroic activity. They're going above and beyond, even in a position like yours that is often heroic, just on a day-to-day basis. So I want to say thank you, and I want to say I really appreciate all the work that you put into putting this together, and the lieutenants that do make this happen as well.
Really appreciate that.
So I think the main thing that I just want to ask about, there's a couple points that I want to bring up. So the first one, could you speak a little bit about traffic enforcement? We do hear a lot about traffic. It's funny because when I was elected to this position, or select board, and highway surveyors, and it feels like the highway surveying and traffic is often the one of the most salient parts of our position. So could you just talk a little bit about how the traffic enforcement, I know you're kind of getting up and running, I saw something, a write-up about Officer Grace, and could you just talk a little bit about how this budget reflects some of those priorities and some of that initiative? There's a grant as well that you were given. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, like many of the programs that we run, the idea comes to us, we think about it, and then we ponder it for a while.
Yep.
And I try to explain as well as everybody understands, these things don't happen overnight. So to start a traffic unit, to start a canine program, to start a motorcycle program, we can't say we'd like to start doing that April 1st. It takes time. It takes a lot of moving pieces. Part of that piecing is staffing, and part of that process is identifying goals. I think I said it when I was doing the motorcycle program. If I came and presented a mounted unit or a helicopter unit, one of the biggest things is, what's the need for that in Holliston? Why would we need something like that? So the part of that process is to determine what's important to the community, what's important to the department. Is that program worth seeking out? Well, what we do a lot of the times, try to relate that back to our strategic plan. The community has told us the 5 things that they want to see most important. Traffic is one of those issues. We are currently in year 3 of our 5-year strategic plan, the second one that the department has. Traffic remains, it was in the first strategic plan, it is also in the second plan. So to me, that tells us that's a priority for the community, it's a priority for the town. So what can we do as a department to address those issues? And we've taken a number of those steps, including starting the motorcycle program, including adding a traffic safety unit and adding a traffic safety officer. That one officer is not only responsible for traffic safety, but he's responsible for traffic education, attending meetings, looking into different safety aspects. We have a number of moving pieces right now with traffic in town, whether it be commercial motor vehicle, whether it be the new 25-mile-an-hour implementation of speed. We also have commercial motor vehicle enforcement that we're looking to do. These things all can't start April 1st. So part of our long-term strategic planning is looking at all those aspects. How can we incorporate a traffic safety unit? When I was in front of this board last year, and for FY21, one of the goals was to create a traffic safety officer. I think an important part of the budgeting process is looking at goals from the previous year and were you able to accomplish that goal? So we came before you and said, we'd like to do this. If we went the other direction and created a mounted unit, you would have said, well, you thought you were doing traffic. So I'm happy to report that we have created that traffic safety unit. We've taken the appropriate steps to address some of the traffic issues, but it remains an issue. It remains part of a priority that we have. So keeping traffic at the forefront, and it's part of one of those 5, is like I said, a department need, but it's also a community need.
Sure. Okay. My second question is, could you speak a little bit about the purchase services? So we have an increase of $59,758 over the previous year, and in FY21 we had basically budgeted, we appropriated $99,700, which was a considerable decrease. Could you just speak a little bit about what was going on and what drove those particular numbers to look like that?
Certainly. Can I circle back real quick on the traffic?
Of course.
I think it's really important to give credit where credit's due.
Certainly.
I don't have the number in front of me, but the number of thousands of dollars we've recently brought in with traffic grants is incredible, whether it be regional training, whether it be for specialized training. The lieutenant is responsible, Lieutenant Larray is responsible for a lot of those grants that have come in. Not only have we applied for them, but we've also received them. So those are all supplemental funding sources that we add to the budget to explore those. So not only are we asking for the funding, but we seek out state grants as well. So I take no credit for what I just presented. Going back to your second question, it is a $59,000 increase in purchase services, and part of that reasoning is, if you looked, that's comparing FY '22 to FY '21.
Right.
I was before you last year in the midst of the pandemic and said, how do we get to a 0% budget increase for FY '21? What we did, fortunately, is we had FY '20 favorability that we were able to use and offset some of those costs in FY '21, which helped us get to that 0% in FY '21. If you look at FY '22 as a quote-unquote normal operational year, and you compare FY '22 to FY '20, where we would have actually been, or better yet, if you compare it to where our FY '21 budget, if COVID didn't exist, the increase is only about $7,500.
Okay.
So it looks big, and it looks like a $60,000 increase, but really, if you add the FY '20 favorability back into FY '21, the increase isn't as dramatic.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have. I'm sure my colleagues will have some good questions as well. So thanks again. Really appreciate everything. And yeah, we did see some of those grants come through. I think there was one for, I think it was like $28,000. It was pretty great to see that we're working on trying to do those things and trying to expand that. So we really appreciate that. It's really been it's a really important part of what we need to be doing. So
Thanks. I think we just recently got 120.
Oh, that's right.
120,000 regional one as well. So
excellent.
thank you.
I'm all set.
Thanks, Ben. Tina?
Yeah, so I mean, Chief Stone, you do a fantastic job when you meet with us one-on-one and go over your budget with very fine detail. And so I wanted to take an opportunity tonight to just sort of summarize my takeaways from that budget presentation that you gave me one-on-one. I really want to call out what you've highlighted in your budget presentation document here, that you had an increase in calls for service. I don't know if the community knows that in, I believe it's 2020, you have it, FY '21, you responded to 18,590 calls for service. That's a remarkable number, and it does represent an increase over previous years. So I think that is worth noting. I also did want to draw attention to the number of grant awards. I believe FY '21 stands out as a year where you received quite a bit more from the hard work that you put into applying for numerous grant programs. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I did want to say that, in reviewing your budget documents and in reviewing your monthly reports, since I've been on the board, I read every one start to finish. A couple of things really stand out to me. You have a focus on training that I think is impressive, that ultimately serves the residents of the town of Holliston and reflects the high level of integrity that your officers have for doing the best job possible. And I really want to call out and applaud you on that focus on professional development and training. I wanted to applaud you, of course, on the traffic safety unit. I've seen that in action personally through my role with Safe Routes to School and through my role on the Traffic Advisory Committee, and I see the good work that you are doing in that capacity. I know there are many more things to come with the traffic safety unit, and I think that is a huge step forward, especially when it's tied to meeting a strategic goal that you have in your 5-year plan. I am struck by the complexity of the calls that you receive. I did have the opportunity to meet with Inspector McGuire for coffee a couple weeks ago, and she explained some of the work that goes on through the Holliston Police Department in responding to mental health calls. The complexity of those calls is remarkable. I believe firmly that you need the staffing consistency and the staffing levels to support the good work that you do in many more than just the areas that I mentioned tonight, but I wanted to draw that out. And then the last thing is really a question. You've noted here, so I'm looking at your short-term and your long-term goals, and from what I understand about the Holliston Police Department, I think these goals are absolutely in line with the work that you've been doing, and I have no doubt at all that you will accomplish these short-term and long-term goals. But I wanted to just point out one thing. Carry out year 4 of the 5-year strategic plan. Should this board expect that there'll be a request for FY '23 that will develop a new 5-year strategic plan? Because I believe there's quite a bit of work that went into that 5-year plan. And is that what you envision? I'm jumping ahead a year, but that caught my attention, that we're in year 4 of 5, and next year we'll be in 5 of 5, which means there's probably some planning to come.
Sure. So, having been directly involved with both the first 2012 to 2017 plan, myself and Officer Giorgio took a large role in that production. We did the same thing in 2017 to 2022. If I were to look at my notes and go back, it probably started about a year in advance. It's a process that takes a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of effort. It's a three-prong approach, so it surveys our internal organization, so it asks the members of the department. The second prong is asking the community, polling the community, getting information from the community. And the third part is the stakeholders, so we invite stakeholders from all over, religious groups, political leaders, the schools, members of the community to see what they believe the stakeholders think are the priorities of the department. Then we take all those three and we draft that into a plan. What we've done in the past, the first 5-year plan had 4 focus areas. Because of the development of mental health and domestic violence, that became our focus area number 5 for the second year. I anticipate those to be relatively the same, with probably new, called team leaders. So each team leader is responsible for a certain section. So the long answer to a short question is yes, I think it's important to keep that strategic plan alive. And part of that when we presented it to our stakeholders and to the community, it's one thing to have the plan, put it on the shelf, and then not look at it for the next 5 years until it's time to do another one. We actively look at it. We keep it on the forefront of our thoughts, because if we're guiding our budgets, if we're guiding our personnel and staffing things based on a strategic plan, but we're never looking at it, then it kind of becomes useless. So we keep it very active and open.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting what you say about the community outreach being one of the 3 prongs. Ben, your comment earlier about what you saw on Facebook and how you welcome community feedback on, ideas and so on. I'll be very interested to learn more about how you go about collecting that feedback, and is it replicated in other areas, other departments, and other initiatives in town. So anyway, so I want to thank you for your budget presentation, and thank you for the good work you do for the town of Holliston, and I have no more questions.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear. I literally thought 2 lieutenants were the only ones that read that report every month, but I'm glad to hear that it gets read. My monthly report.
I have 4 children. I read it carefully.
Thanks, Tina. Chief, a few questions for you. When we met, you had presented some analysis that showed the town of Holliston's police department staffing was not reflective of communities that were measured through the governance committee's basket of comparable communities. You were at the time planning for a correction for staffing, and I don't see that in this budget for FY22. Is that correct?
It is in there.
It is? Could you please identify where it is?
It would be under regular salaries.
Okay. And that position is
5.112.
okay. So that position, in terms of duties, have you identified where that position will land and what they'll be featured doing?
Yeah, so currently, as you mentioned, or as was mentioned, traffic enforcement is one aspect of that. There are certain areas where we've added to personnel, one of which was in FY18, we added an officer for a second SRO. That SRO is still in the schools and has a relationship with the elementary and middle schools. FY19, we weren't able to add a body. In FY20, we were able to add 2. Those 2 positions were for traffic enforcement and an evening detective. We've implemented both of those since those additions. In FY21, we were unable to add another body, which is why we come to you in FY22. The FY22 body is more of a utility and able to maintain a lot of those programs. So right now, what we do is we try not to rely on any of our specialties for patrol. For example, during the day shift, we have 1, sometimes 2 SROs working. We have a court prosecutor that's working. We try to leave those specialties, if you will, untouched. We try to leave the traffic safety officer untouched during the evening shifts so that he can concentrate on traffic. The issue becomes when staffing reduces so low that you start taking from those specialties. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the backbone of the agency is patrol. If we don't have officers out there on patrol actively driving around the streets, then that is our number 1 priority. The specialties help us to enhance those services that we provide to the town. So the additional body will allow us to keep these positions intact and running the way they are, in addition to adding a traffic safety proponent to the day shift. Right now, we run the traffic safety officer with somewhat of a flex schedule, but he's mostly assigned to the evening shift. We do flex him down sometimes to days. Certain provisions allow us to do that in certain time periods and not. The idea of that extra officer is to assign, not one particular officer per se, but assign an officer, every day from 9 to 3 p.m. or whatever the case is, to just focus on traffic. And the traffic that that person focuses on, the officer focuses on, is hopefully going to trickle down from the traffic safety officer. This is what I heard at the traffic advisory committee. These are the issues we're hearing from town. Can you focus for the next 2 weeks on this particular area? So that's kind of where we see that.
I think it's important, this evening you've delivered an opening remark and a statement about the status of the department, priorities that guide your department. I think it's important that folks understand that the past year has been unusual for everyone, but particularly Holliston PD. You folks encountered some early COVID positive issues that you had to cope with on your staffing that challenged this model you're talking about. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah. So almost a year to the day, today's March 1st. March 13th, I believe, I put out the first special order shortly before the town declared a state of emergency. We were at the point we didn't know, nobody knew what was going on. The only constant that we knew, and the one thing we were sure of, we weren't allowed to, work remotely. We would have liked to, but that was one thing our people knew day in and day out. We had to be here, so we had to. We didn't have a choice. We had to put special orders in place early and keep them. They're still in there today. We haven't rescinded, I don't think, one of them, to ensure public safety is here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We did have a spell at the beginning in April where we did have, we work so closely together. We have roll calls together. We share cruisers together. For our agency, who's working from the streets, one case could spread among a shift, could spread among a certain group of officers. And unfortunately, that did happen in early April. I'm happy to report that about 50% of the department has been vaccinated to this point. Our special orders are still in place as we speak, and knock on wood, I think we're starting to see the upward trend of that and the benefits of having those special orders.
I wanted to ask, it would appear as though you might have a placeholder here for collective bargaining increases. Is that correct?
I don't believe it's reflected in this one.
I thought I saw something. Nope. So that increase on line 50, I can't read that. That's not healthy. 51,112?
Yeah.
Regular
that's
salaries?
the regular salaries.
That's the 26,000.
That's all it is?
Yes. And that would be, you have some, there are some officers, I think 4 total, that are in the step process right now.
And folks should understand that we are actively engaged with the Holliston Police Association. We have a meeting Wednesday night, I think, to take another step in the direction of looking at a 3-year contract for FY21. They agreed to 0% growth, but we're looking for terms beyond that point. So that's
additionally, there are, as we've seen with all other budgets, non-union COLA has not been set for 22, but we expect that to be done soon. That would also impact this budget.
Last question, Chief, is relative to the Police Reform Act, which the legislature passed at the end of 2020. The act was sweeping in that it set the ground rules, guidelines, training, and other requirements for all police departments in the community, in the Commonwealth, rather. I've seen some traffic. I think Lieutenant Thompson drafted a crosswalk that helped you identify areas within your accreditation, your training curriculum and protocols that needed to evolve, change, or be updated. Can you give the community update? Can you give the community an update this evening on how ready or prepared Holliston PD is to embrace all of the Police Reform Act measures?
Sure. So much of it's still yet to be known. We've gone to meetings and we've gone to different webinars to kind of give us an idea of what's coming down and what's going to be coming down the pike, if you will, for July 1. The commission, the post-commission has yet to be formed, so a lot of that is still being determined. I looked at it as one of 2 ways. We could sit back and be told what to do and wait till July and kind of sit on our hands and wait, or take a proactive approach and try to look at things that we know are going to be coming and try to start making those changes now, and that's exactly what we've done. Lieutenant Thompson is our accreditation manager. I would say there's not a ton of work to be done, but there is some work, and the reason for that is because we just did get reaccredited, so a lot of our policies are already considered the best practices. The only policy, the language that we're really changing is specific to this police reform bill. We've sent officers to training that we know will most likely be part of the protocols for post. Part of that is fair and impartial policing. We've sent all 5 of our supervisors to that class. Just recently, that class has become available. This is not a mandated class by any means, but we signed all 25 officers up to attend that training. That training does come with a price tag. It comes with a cost. But to say that we're having all 25 officers trained in fair and impartial policing before that's required are proactive steps that we're taking to address some of these issues. The lieutenant has put together a number of policies that require language changes. Some are minor, some are nor and shall and will, but some are more significant. There's a tremendous impact to our school resource office, the memorandum that we have with our schools and what we can do, and information that we can share. In addition, we review policies. We used to review policies at roll call and quick 2-second overview. We now do 2 a month through our accreditation software, which helps tremendously. So we go through month by month and look at those policies. We're also seeking additional training right now in de-escalation, our use of force, autism, mental health, and legal law and liability. So those are just some of the steps we've already taken prior to the commission being formed.
Thank you for that. So from what I'm hearing is that the apparatus the state put in place with that special act has not been fully stood up yet. That the Commonwealth, its training infrastructure, and the committees that are going to sort of direct where things go hasn't formed. There were certain timelines, Chief, associated with those, and I think they're starting to be blown past, right? Wasn't April 1st an important date?
April 1st is one of them. The formation of what the commissions are going to be. I think there's 18 different commissions that will look at different aspects of policing. Supposedly those are up on July 1.
All right. So administratively, Chad, you've done the crosswalk. We see where the act says this, our accreditation says this, and here's the bridge. And what you're reporting, Chief, is to date, all we know is those administrative updates are occurring, correct?
Right, there was a few that were immediate, December 30th, they were immediate after the bill that were supposed to meet. I remember July 1st, there's a few like September 30th.
Got it.
And then a couple like December 30th to it.
Well, what I'm also hearing, Chief, is that following that administrative act, there are other elements that Holliston PD, along with 350 other communities, are awaiting state guidance on. That's sort of the next step. Okay. Is it safe to say that your FY22 budget proposal includes or excludes any impact of the Reform Act on operations?
It does. There was an increase to training overtime, and with the training overtime line, that is accounting for a lot of the specialty training and certification. Every officer in Massachusetts is going to have to become certified, and the process of decertification is where post comes in. If an officer gets terminated or gets suspended, they'll be either temporarily decertified or permanently decertified. But in order to keep certification and get an officer certified, they're going to have to attend training. Even at the request that we're making on the training overtime line, with just the responsibilities and just the liability in the collective bargaining agreement, we're still only covering 70% of that total liability. So if we paid every hour of training dictated in the collective bargaining agreement, the request would be 30% higher than it is now. But through cooperation with the union, working with our scheduling and trying to find different training opportunities, we can get that number down to as low as 70%.
Got it. And my last question is relative to capital, Chief. I do see within your budget you have a capital line item for tasers and cartridges, but outside that, do you have any capital requests that are coming before the board for the upcoming spring town meeting?
We do. I've worked with the town administrator, and we have that list. I believe we have 4 items for spring of 2021 for a total of approximately $89,000. That includes a recording system, a battery backup system, a phone replacement system, and an electronic key door system. All 4 of those items have been vetted and spoken to either the town technology director and or the building maintenance director. I'm trying to think of facilities manager.
Bottle washer.
And then we have our typical request for the fall in October of 2021 for cruisers.
Great.
But those would be the requests.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from folks assembled on the Zoom call for the FY22 Holliston Police Department budget proposal? Hearing none. Let me turn to my colleagues this evening and find out, are you interested in voting upon this budget? Any questions, any thoughts, concerns? Ben?
No.
Dive in,
I'm
water's warm
comfortable.
here?
No?
I'm comfortable with it.
Comfortable?
I'm still drying off from the last time I drove in.
Yes,
Budget.
okay. You were
I
good?
have no questions.
All right, would you like to make a motion, Mr.
Sure.
Farrell?
I will make a motion to approve the Police Department FY22 fiscal year request of $3,185,700. That's right, isn't it? Make sure that's right.
There's a number below that.
That's the guideline.
Gotcha. So you are 5.4 above. Yep, okay. I have a motion. Do I have a
I
second?
will second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Matt, thanks so much for coming in this evening. Lieutenant, always good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Be safe up there.
Thank you. Out of pure curiosity, I could look it up, and we're at number 11 on the Save the Cities. I believe Holliston's number 2, so I will call Chief Bennett this week and see what we can do.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll send my kids over to
I
hockey.
think they're number 2 or 3. They're up there high, so.
So, George is gonna hang for auxiliary.
Yes,
Okay.
let me stick.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good night.
Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening, I apologize, I lost my voice on Friday.
No worries.
Oh, we'll put on a bolo on that.
All the talks for grants.
Is that right? Oh,
You have an auxiliary budget to present this evening.
Correct.
Do the statement, or do you just wanna dive into the proposed budget that Mr. Mayo has just put up on our overhead?
I just dive right into it.
All right, go for it. And if you need to take a rest, give you a voice rest, let me know.
As a, so, 2 years ago, I before the board, my staff in the auxiliary was really low. I only had 9, auxiliary officers. The board and the finance committee gave me the opportunity to increase that, which I was able to do. I got all the way to 15 officers. Just as this year, 2 of them retired. Both moved out of town, and, doing obligations, so they never retired in the position. I'm currently now doing backgrounds of 2 more auxiliary officers in that position. Dr. Danny Lee, an incredible officer. He was my light patrol officer. He was on the rail trail every weekend, the spring and fall, doing the beaches and parks, and Henry was incredible with helping with organizing some of our policies and procedures to get it out to everybody. I owe them a great debt of respect and gratitude for what they've done for us here. Moving forward, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor's orders, these orders pretty much had to take a step back when it came to our events. We usually cover 27 to 30 events a year, to assist the full-time police department to our events for background and overtime. And because of the order, these events were canceled. Celebrate also was one of our biggest events, was canceled. But we didn't quite take a big step back. We knew that people were going to be on the rail trail. We had the auxiliary officers on the rail trail. We did a big parade when that came around. The auxiliary officers were out there helping with the birthday parade. Hazardous Waste Day, they were out there assisting with that. And the high school parade. So even though we had the pandemic and those social distancing things, we were able to participate in some of those events. And I'm grateful for what they did. Again, the auxiliary has to volunteer unit, they were paid to do what they do. For activity-wise, cruiser-wise, shift-wise is 390 hours per year. I meet with the staff about 20 hours. Monthly training, just like the police department, they still have to maintain service training and training. We talked in depth with Chief Stone, the post affects the auxiliary police department as well. We don't know hours, but I've done what I had to do to bring them up to full standard. That's my question, that's my guess. I don't know. But we don't know if the state has given notification, what they're gonna do. The only thing I'm moving the bill is that, reserve officers have to come up to full standard, and they're doing it right out by the border by the end of the year. And that time starts July 1, but they don't do it full standard for the reserve officers. And so I don't know in the professional development wise what's going to be asking for. Out of town eventual officer, we usually do the Boston Marathon in Milford, 4th of July. They were called in a couple of times due to storms, and then the bike and utility patrols is linked. So the utility officers out there on bike patrols for the rail trail in particular, and the utility patrols as well, help with beaches. And they usually carry water with them so people would get hydrated. Throughout the course of the year, they did 1,057 hours, and we had a higher patrol officer do the same. 45 the town, it was $80,040. And for the budget, level funded, professional development, stays the same, legal maintenance stays the same, supplies stays the same. And again, the question I don't know is, what the cost is, right, to post standard.
Is that it, George?
Yeah.
Excellent. Any questions? I have one question here. Do you by chance know how many hours you used the previous year? You use 1,057, or you in FY in the past year, so?
It's usually a little bit, right about the same, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less.
Okay.
We had less officers,
Right.
so it was a little bit less, now we have more, so it got increased a little bit.
Kind of do it.
And then again, I had to be creative, because all the events we can't do.
Sure. Do you also, one other question would be, so you mentioned that you're not sure entirely like what you might need for professional development. Are you comfortable with this number if, no matter what the situation might be, if there's something comes up or more is required, you'd be okay?
Right now, I'd say I'm comfortable where it is until I exactly know.
Okay.
What I have done to be proactive in this is I was able to get all the auxiliaries assigned up to the MVTC and CADIS, just like the full-timers are. So they're doing the same online in-service as the full-timers. It wasn't easy for me to do, but I was able to get them all up there. I had approved a lot. I had to show them that they're accredited. We follow the same standards, and they're all service academy trained.
All set. Tina?
I was gonna ask Ben the same question about professional development, but I hear you respond that you're comfortable with where it is right now, so I will just make the statement like I did last year. I'm just so humbled by their willingness to serve. You talk about the level of training and services and the duties they perform, and it's really remarkable. So I have no questions. Thank you.
Nor do I. Holliston Auxiliary, best deal in town, dollar for dollar. So I will entertain a motion to approve the FY22 budget. Mr. Sparrow, if you can give us the number.
Certainly. I will make a motion to approve the auxiliary police budget for FY22, the proposed budget, in the amount of $13,902.06.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. George, I hope your voice comes back soon, and thanks for coming in.
You can more grants you're applying for, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Get some rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
We're going to move on to the Animal Control Officer, and I believe Town Administrator will handle that presentation.
Yes, it's not a lot to look at. I did put down on here some risks to the proposed budget, and I did provide in your packet the MOA that the town has with the town of Ashland. A couple things I would just point out here. There is no real end date to the MOA. We have, however, had discussions. I think as I came into town in July, town of Ashland was looking to re-engage on the MOA. They've had some turnover there since that point, and Chief Stone and I, reached out to say if there's any changes that the town of Ashland is looking for going into FY22, we need to know. And at this point, I don't think there is from their perspective. I think we're probably on a stage where we'd be looking for FY23 to have a discussion about this. So that is as it relates to the MOA between us and the town of Ashland. I think at the same point, some of the issues that, you know, we've sort of seen in town is, just as Ashland may be concerned whether or not 38,000 is, sort of covering our side of the arrangement, I think at the same point, one of the conversations we should be having, most likely over the next fiscal year, is going to be the level of service that the town of Holliston is looking for from the animal control officer. Obviously, by sharing the resource, we are not having a dedicated resource to ourselves. I think there's certainly a benefit, especially when it comes to cost, to the arrangement that we've had. The reason that Ashland was interested in talking about the arrangement is that there is no escalator, and the MOA essentially runs in perpetuity. It also does not have anything as it relates to cost of living increases, and it does not really have anything that speaks to the replacement of capital assets. So one of the things that Chief Stone and I discussed briefly was sort of what would it look like if the town had this level of service within the town of Holliston specifically. Looking at the capital assets, the biggest pieces that we would have to consider are, one, the vehicle, and two, a kennel. Both of those we can certainly cost out and may have one-time costs. At the same point, I think we should look at that, if that might be a potential solution for the town in the future, we should also have more discussions with Ashland about if we think that we may need a more robust ACO system between the two towns, what we can do to be a part of that. That's a long-winded way to say that I don't have any change for the FY22 request. I think that those are longer discussions that we can certainly have. And as I said, the MOA is not going to force the issue. It would be us looking to engage in that conversation and determine the level of service that we're looking for the community.
Questions, Beth? No. Tina?
As you read this MOA, Travis, do you understand it to mean the animal control officer reports to you as town administrator on issues that come up on a I think it's worded here, on a day-to-day basis and as required by the town of Holliston for all duties associated with the town? Do you understand that to be, that's what I'm reading right here, and I'm just wondering, you've been here only, now 7 months. Have you seen, is that the relationship as you understand it from your experience?
Everything that I've needed from the ACO, I get her on the line. She's very responsive to those issues. I think the actual day-to-day operations when it comes to needs, the animal control officer, generally speaking, is going to go through dispatch, and the needs are coming through the police department to the ACO. That's the more common line of getting the need to the ACO than going through the town administrator's office. Okay. However, there are certainly those issues that do come through the town administrator's office. They're just far less frequent. Okay. Yeah, I know we're not here to discuss the MOA, but I just wanted, this is our first time actually as a board talking to you about this position, so. Yeah, and I think there's, I think holistically, generally speaking, it's going to be more cost-effective to find regional solutions, and I don't want to say that this can't work. I think we certainly, I understand why Ashland will want to sit down and say, is this the right agreement? Can we make some changes to make it more equitable? And I think as I certainly am willing to spend time and sit down with them to go through that and see if we can come to an arrangement that works for everybody. I think we also just need to decide as a town, if we're getting the level of service that we're looking for, if there's other changes. I think it's just part of having an overarching conversation on the issue. You good? Well, I remember this being on the discussion from last year. It was going to be a next year kind of thing. Here we are next year, but I appreciate the fact that we went through major transition on two fronts. One was the pandemic and the other was the change in town administrator. And so part of me is like, so next year we're going to talk about this? And yet that's what we said a year ago. Yep. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to hand it over to John then. Take it away.
Yeah, so I was going to say deja vu all over again because before you arrived, we had this conversation last February with your predecessor, and we had the chief from Ashland in with the ACO to talk about the terms of the MOA and the status of things ahead. I think to summarize it very briefly, we had some very pointed community concerns and complaints about services, and we needed to loop in sort of solution-based process of what are we going to expect going forward. At the same time, Ashland was asking for more money. They wanted to, infuse this program with more resources, It didn't get done, and it appears as though, again, we're gonna level fund this. So I've got two questions for you. Number one, is Ashland prepared to accept services in FY '22 without an MOA for that amount of money? Have we leveled with them about what's coming, and are they going to accept it?
Chief Stone and I have been very proactive in making sure that it was known that if we were going to get a request for a number greater than $38,000, we needed to see it in writing to be able to assess it, and we've received nothing else, and we have an MOA that runs essentially in perpetuity, and so that is the expectation. Again, I mean, I think from a certain standpoint, you look at it and you say that the town of Ashland is better off with $38,000 in the current arrangement than having zero. At the same point, I think Ashland, would probably not, if we have a further discussion and it turns out that it does not make sense for us to be paying more for the level of service that we're providing, I think, Ashland would seriously consider just, sort of breaking the arrangement, and I think they may be happy with that. At the same point, I think the conversation needs to be had, and while we started that conversation, Chief Stone and I, when I started, some turnover on the other side, we just didn't get a chance to complete it, and at this point, we don't have the time really to continue that. I think now that I've been here for over 6 months, I think between now and next fiscal year, it's certainly, I've been aware of this, and my expectation would be that we won't have deja vu next year.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the FY '22 budget of $38,000.
I will make the motion to approve the animal control budget for FY '22 in the amount of $38,000.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Thanks, Travis. Employee benefits.
Yes. Sorry, Mary.
That's okay, Travis, I'll get you tomorrow.
All right, so, Chris, if you want to pull this one up, it's going to be a little difficult because it's wide. So if you can zoom in a little bit, it's the column that has been circled that is the most important. So if you want to take it away, Mary?
Sure, the first line item is the county retirement line item. The after allocation cost is $2,375,731. That includes approximately $36,000 going towards our unfunded liability at Middlesex Retirement, or put into the hopefully new stabilization pension fund. Workers' comp, we have $311,589. Unemployment, we're leaving at $100,000. From speaking with the business manager last week, depending what happens with COVID, we could have some layoffs in the schools, but at the same time, we could have another program reopening. So we're trying to take care of any possibilities we could have for future layoffs. Disability insurance is $35,116. Life insurance, $15,201. Health insurance, $5,506,654. This includes the 3.4% increase that we have in our rates. About $3.3 million was used of the West Suburban Health Group's unfunded fund surplus to mitigate the rates this year. The HSA contribution is $52,000. The HSA admin fee is $1,500. Employee share responsibility is $10,000, and that is every year we set aside money in case IRS and Social Security Administration decide to review the 1095s that we have to issue and issue us a penalty. So we figure in some money for that. We have Medicare at $555,358. Medicare Part B is the Medicare Part B penalty that we pay of $9,200. And that's for the retirees who were eligible for Medicare Part A and B, but did not sign up for it when they were 65. We have OPEB of $1,456,470. Settlements for salary accounts is $75,000. We have other admin fees of $15,000 for a total budget of $10,518,819.
Any questions on the presentation of employee benefits? Ben?
The only question I have is, it just might be a semantic one. With respect to the retirement, we've, in the past, if my memory is correct, we would get a benefit from prepaying, or paying, it's not prepaying, excuse me, but paying everything at the beginning of the year.
Correct.
Is that, the budget still reflective of that? And then that prepayment, we're talking about potentially putting that into a retirement stabilization fund, is that?
Yeah, Mary
correct.
referenced off the top that, in the current fiscal year, there's about, I believe it's $47,000 that Mary and I have discussed if, the article is approved by the select board to create the, pension stabilization fund, using that as seed money for that stabilization fund. The same would be true. This is what's reflected is in the non-allocation, so just to the left of the one that's circled, is the full amount for our schedule from Middlesex that we're legally obligated to fund. And so if Mary continues her methodology, we would anticipate that there would be a balance of that left at the end. The after allocation of the 2.3 is what hits the tax levy.
Okay, that's my only question.
Mary, I'm just looking at 51754 HSA contributions.
Yep.
Expended for FY20. But
So this year, we're in negotiations with the PEC group again for health insurance. So right now, there's probably less than 50 employees that are on the high deductible plan, in which we're contributing half of the deductible to an HSA account. So if the PEC agrees that we're going to offer the high deductible plans to non-union employees, the current employees already on the high deductible plan have already been getting the HSA contribution, and there won't be a savings in premiums to offset that cost going forward. So I have built that into the budget.
so I have two questions. Well,
Okay.
a question and a comment. The expended for fiscal year 21, are the contributions to the employees' HSA generally made after December 31? Is that why it's as low as 12,000 there when?
Well, we do it at the end of the quarter. So we made a payment in this fiscal year in October. Then we made
Okay.
one in the beginning of January, and then we'll make another one in beginning of April.
Okay.
And then the last week
am I-
of June.
Got it. So there's three
We
more
do
that
it-
are not captured.
Correct.
Okay, got it. I'm just going to make a plug for high deductible health plans. We are on one, and it is a very good healthcare plan. And I am curious and excited actually to see the health insurance. Are you going to do like an employee benefit fair of some sort when?
Oh, we won't be allowed to do an employee benefits fair because of COVID. So we'll be
I'm
working.
assuming some.
We'll be working with the health care providers to see if they can provide us a video or some kind of Zoom call where employees can ask questions or watch a presentation. We're still working on the logistics for that.
Okay, I'll look forward to watching that actually, because I'm a big proponent of high deductible health plans. So I'm glad we're considering this move. So thank you very much. I have no other questions, Mary.
Thanks, Tina. Question, I'm not sure if it's for Travis or Mary, but reading the spreadsheet, I just need a little help. Mary went through this list that totals $10.518 million. It's an increase reportedly of $515,000. But I note we have actually three columns for FY21. Two of them have the exact same title. Are we sourcing the second one? Can you help me understand the difference between the request fiscal year 2021 and the request fiscal year 2021? They were off by about $500,000. What happened?
So
Why?
the first column you see is no allocations. That's before the chargebacks for the Veterans District Water and Extended Day. Then you have the after allocations.
Chris, can you scroll to the right just to show? So these are the service areas that also pay into it.
Okay.
So the amount that hits tax support, the tax levy, is in the circled one for after allocation.
And the others are offsets?
Right, so Veterans District pays their way, water indirect pays their way, and Extended Day is the other one that Mary and I sat down with Keith Bidet, Sharon Emmerich last week.
All right. Any questions on the Zoom for employee benefits budget for FY22? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve this budget, Mrs. Farrell.
I do have a question. Are we approving the after allocation budget? Is that accurate?
You're approving the entire amount. The after allocation just happens to be what's hitting the tax impact. But you would approve this entire budget.
So the 11,008,000.
Yes.
Should be the motion.
Yep.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the employee benefits budget for FY '22 in the amount of $11,008,470.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It carries.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Travis, any review of prior budgets at this point to report?
So this would be a good time to just discuss, Thursday night, February 25th, we had, fire, ambulance, and emergency management budgets. The select board approved the emergency management budget, and asked the fire chief to bring back information for the fire and ambulance that answered some of the questions, that have been put forth. I would suggest, our schedule after this evening, has been completed. At the same point, we would be transitioning now to warrant discussions, starting on March 8th, but we could make time, and I will put on the agenda if it would be, suitable for the board, to review the fire and ambulance revised budget requests from the fire chief at that point.
Any thoughts on this? Ben, Tina?
My only question is when are you scheduled to present to the finance committee?
The 9th.
The 9th. So we probably want to try to do it next week before we have that.
That would be March 8th, yeah. Yep.
Well, that's the scheduled date, but if his budget's not ready, then they're gonna have to wait, right?
Yeah, absolutely, but I'm just thinking of, whenever we're ready, it's fine, but I was just sort of thinking
Gotcha.
about that in context.
Gotcha. Tina, any thoughts?
No, I appreciate the extra time.
Travis, I'd like to see, next week, maybe, it's gonna be a very busy meeting next week, but, I think if you could circulate to the board a budget that summarizes where we financially stand, what kind of, stressors we have, knowing what you know about, all of the budgets that are in play, both ones that report to us and ones that don't. Because this committee met last Thursday and had concerns about one department's resources as it was presented to us, and we're gonna have to make some choices, and I think a lot of it just boils down to what's the availability of funding to close those gaps. So, in order to expedite the discussion next, Monday, if you could help us see what type of flexibility there appears to be in the FY '22 budget along that line, that'll be helpful.
I will present a full budget and revenue picture, and we will have that conversation at that point.
Do you have intel on virtually all FY '22 budgets, for the town at this point to complete that view, or?
I do. The only uncertainties that we have, so I have two versions of school budgets. One is the level service budget, one is the superintendent budget. I have the overarching Keefe budget, and I did discuss with them what more reasonably will probably come in. What we are missing is the two CBAs on the town side, DPW and police, as well as the non-union COLA number, which would encompass also department heads. I can put in placeholders for those numbers for our discussions, and we can have that conversation as it relates to all of the budgets you reviewed, plus the fire and ambulance budget.
Let's circle around that kind of a solution for the next week. Great. All right. Board business. Moving on here. Mr. Farrell, we have police grants.
Yes. I will make a motion to accept a police donation for $1,300 from Med Project USA, and it is, the purpose of the gift is just a police donation, $1,300 to the police department gift account.
I'll second that.
I'm going to introduce a quick comment before I go all in on this. I made this point under Mr. Ritter a while ago, and I just want to make it clear through your stewardship that whenever the town receives grants from any organization, in my world, we want to make sure that there's a disclaimer up front that the grant doesn't entitle you to any special privileges or rights or other benefits. It's a straight out gift, and it's arm's length, in other words. So I don't know if Sharon has such a disclaimer for any such grants or donations, Travis, but, I don't know who this organization is, and I'm trusting so far that the process is clear and free of any conflict or appearance of it, but if you could just clear that up,
Absolutely.
through either our internal controls or whatever Sharon has for policy. All right?
Will do.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next one.
The next one is I'll make a motion to accept a gift to the senior center for $250 from George and Margaret Sims, and it is in appreciation of meals provided to their parents. And it is, received to the nutrition revolving fund.
Is that a motion?
It was a motion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And thank you to both groups for their generous donations. Mr. Sparrow, some meeting minutes.
Yes, I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for February 8th, 2021, and February 16th, 2021 for the select board. Was there, one of those have an executive session?
Nope, those are both.
Okay. Well, I know both the minutes are, I just want to make sure, I would just want to make sure if there was an executive session on one of those dates.
Yeah, we haven't seen any executive session meeting minutes, in a while, so you might want
But I just want to make sure that, what the point I was trying to make is that these minutes are not reflective of those executive sessions.
Right.
No. Nope, I've provided a set of executive session minutes. We can vote those at, another time. This is just the meetings, the regular scheduled meeting.
So good, you made a motion,
I'll second that with a quick comment for you, Travis. Please let Peg know that she's so timely on getting the minutes for review.
Yeah, she
I
does a
really
great job.
appreciate it, and if you have an edit, she gets right back to you, so it is much appreciated, but I second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those two meeting minutes carry. Next one, Travis. Excuse me,
We both have the same hairstyle. So, all right, I will, make a motion to accept an MAPC grant to the senior center in the amount of $34,470, and it is for providing transport to Holliston seniors and veterans through the use of taxi cab, livery, and hacking partnerships. And it is, received to the MAPC grant, account.
This is a significant reason we were able to revert money back to CARES.
Yes.
did you read that it's both for seniors and veterans, correct?
Yes, it is for seniors and veterans.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the $34,470. Have a second?
I have a question, I have a question then. This is for their existing transportation program. Because we have a second grant coming up, but, so yes, I second this.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And the next one, Senior Center Grant for Bay Path Elder Services.
Yes. So I will make a motion to accept a $4,000 grant from Bay Path Elder Services to provide transportation to Holliston seniors for vaccine appointments. It will be received to the Bay Path grant account.
The motion to have a second.
I'll second it with a comment that, every meeting I am humbled by something. It was mentioned earlier by the chief. I actually wrote this down as the name of the grant being the Quick Turnaround Grant.
All right.
Second this motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Other business. Mrs. Sparrow.
I have no other business.
Ms. Hine, any good? Other business?
My only other business is to thank Officer Lee and Officer Reed of the, auxiliary police force for their, service to the town of Holliston and to congratulate them on their retirement. And I failed to do this last week, and to thank Eric Amon, who we, appointed last week, to the auxiliary police force. So that was all I had for other business.
Thank you. The only, piece of business I have is as, our state, our community, begins to, come up on the one-year anniversary of the, Emergency Act for, COVID mobilization. I'd ask, through you, Mr. Ahern, for the chief to prepare, a one-year summary of, the events and circumstances of the COVID, pandemic on our community. I think it's important people take a step back and listen to what our community has endured, what the services that the taxpayers paid for have delivered, and what we have is in terms of apparatus and infrastructure to keep them safe. sort of a holistic annual report, if you will, on the COVID impact. Earlier tonight, I had some remarks with Chief Stone, and he's right. About a year ago, nobody knew anything. This was a very odd, alien environment that we were facing, and suddenly everybody around you was susceptible to a deadly virus, and members of his force got hit early, and it was scary. There's a lot going on. So I think it's important we have a look at what's occurred in the last 12 months, and through you, if we could have the chief present that as part of his update in about 2 weeks, that would be great. As long as you have the bandwidth, I think it's something that people would find insightful and helpful. All right. Other than that, any other comments from folks assembled on our Zoom call this evening? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Good night, Holliston.